It's actually been around for nearly 50 years in a fashion. In the 1960s, Niall Steiner was having a little play around in his garage with basically making a switch that worked by breath pressure, and he found that he could switch on a note on and off. So it was a very, very basic setup to begin with. He's a trumpet player, and he made an instrument with valves. They actually had moving valves, and he started playing around with a breath pressure driven synthesizer. Later on in the 60s, he managed to kind of get that to be able to control the volume as well, and one thing led to another, and we eventually get to this EWI that we have today. So he got together with a chap called Joel Peskin, I think sometime in the 70s. They kind of cobbled together a company and started to hand make what they called the EV, the electronic valve instrument. Eventually he got rid of the moving valves and made the keys very similar to this. So since the 70s, kind of prototypes that they were working on, things haven't really changed very much at all. And after the EV, this EWI instrument came about pretty quickly. So I think it was about 2006 that this particular model came out. So that first piece was kind of demonstrating some of the things. You could hear some of the range of sounds that this thing has. In case some of you haven't seen it before, it's a wind-driven synthesizer. Okay, so this end reacts to how hard you blow, and it reacts to how much lip pressure you apply as well. So you can get some you can get a vibrato control as well as a volume control. The keys on the front are all touch sensitive, which takes a little bit of getting used to. You know, we're all taught on the saxophone to keep the keys your fingers pretty close to the keys. On this, you've got to be really careful because a tiny little brush of any of those keys will trigger the next note. The most interesting thing really is the back. So instead of just the 1 octave key, we've now got 8 octave rollers on the back. And for most saxophone players, that's the bit that takes the most getting used to. Your thumb has to slide sort of up and down the rollers to get into the different octaves. And it's kind of quite a nice system once you get used to it, but to begin with, it's probably one of the hardest bits to get used to. Internally, it's got some sounds of its own. They are all kind of analog, pretty similar sort of sounds. I'll just give you a quick demonstration. There's a little bit of variation between the if I tom it very hard, I get that kind of chip to the sound. But if I attack it more gently, for the technically minded, there are 2 oscillators in there. What that means is you can actually produce 2 notes at the same time. And that kind of leads me on to the next little demo that I've been using for a little while on this instrument. So there's a basic amount of effects in there as well. There's a reverb, a chorus, and there's a delay. So delays, you know, it'll kind of fire away the same sound again just a moment after. So if you are Billy No Mates and you don't have any friends, you can still have a bit of fun. Well, I think it's fun. Playing some, you know, like the Telemann canonic duets. So if you get this delay worked out to the right kind of distance, able to explain all the things that were going on in the first piece, because there's quite a lot happening in there with looping pedals and all sorts happening, sample sounds being triggered. But for those of you who were listening really carefully, you might have heard that I was playing little duets in there as well. There were two sounds happening. So this is a much clearer example of how you can sustain one note and play a second note. It's just a little duet. It's 5 seconds. By the way, we hopefully, if we have some time, we'll have a little session of questions if anyone has them afterwards, and after the event, if you want to come up and look at the gear and see what's happening, please do. So, interestingly, Niall Steiner, his main goal behind making this instrument, really, was so he could make lots of other sounds. In fact, the very first thing he was trying to do was make a string sound from a wind-driven synthesizer. And that led him to develop his own synthesizers as well, and various sounds. So the world of imitative sounds was really what he was after. In fact, that was really what he's done now for 30-odd years. He's been hugely employable as a vast array of instruments just with the one person. So, I mean, there are other reasons why you might kind of use an EWI. I mean, the fact is that the saxophone player can have, you know, a huge amount of different sounds available. The potential outlay is actually quite cheap. I mean, these are 500 quid. That can get you going. Obviously, if you want to go further into sound, you need a laptop and sound modules, whatever. Transposition is really easy. There's a button on the back. It's great. So that means there's a vast amount of music that you can pick up off the shelf and play if you fancy doing some flute playing or whatever. You know, it's all in there. It can be easier to play than a saxophone in the fact that there's no embouchure, and people with physical difficulties or that sort of thing might enjoy playing the instrument. There are various different types of fingerings that you can choose from as well. So I have mine to set as a saxophone fingering because that's what I use most of the time. But there's oboe fingering, there's the EWI fingering, and there's a flute fingering. There's even a brass instrument fingering where you only use the 3 bottom keys, a bit like a valve thing, and these rollers give you the different octaves in the same way. So Niall Steiner's original EWI kind of looked a bit like a big bug sprayer. He had 3 valves and he had this kind of rotating canister at the bottom, which basically had those on the bottom, and that's how he switches octaves on his. It's quite an attractive instrument. If I go and play, I know it looks like a toy train, but if I go and play this on a gig, and you know, I don't use it lots, but if I do it within the context of a whole concert, you can guarantee there's going to be a few people afterwards come up and say, "Wow, what was that? You know, that was great." And so people quite enjoy coming to the gig. For things like schools and churches, bands, you know, if you're short of an instrument or if you need to cover some instruments, this thing can actually sit quite nicely in a band. We had a thing the other day where a little kid was playing the EWI. We had no bass saxophone, and we managed to actually make a pretty decent job of having a bass saxophone part filled in by, I don't know, what was he, 10 or 11 or something, and he did a great job. So, but as I say, it's really for that kind of imitative sound thing that Niall Steiner sort of started to develop things. Excuse me. And if you're a film goer at all, you have heard Niall Steiner play. You won't realise it, but if if I read a couple of film titles, I think you're going to have seen one of these, and so you'll have heard Niall Steiner. Apocalypse Now, The Colour Purple, Dead Poets Society, Fatal Attraction, Ghost Officer and a Gentleman, Pocahontas, Little Mermaid, Spider-Man, Titanic, Finding Nemo, Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12. If you watch TV, Columbo, Candy and Lacey, Dallas, Quincy, St. Elsewhere, you know, you've all heard some EWI being played in there, and that's Niall Steiner. I was talking to someone earlier about a concert that I saw, a kind of a video of not long ago. Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand didn't perform for 11 years. She kind of got stage fright. And then she did this really big concert in her back garden, and charged about $5,000 a ticket, I think. And Niall Steiner was there. He was one of the 8 musicians, and she introduced him individually because he was putting in oboe and French horn, flute and clarinet, and you name it. And within the blend of the whole band, you know, you can get away with some of that a little bit. Again, it's probably not my favourite kind of bit of the EWI, but I thought it would be interesting for you to hear some of the sampled sounds. So this next piece that I'm going to try and just demonstrate that to you. If we've all switched over properly, let's see. I wanted to do something that kind of related a little bit to being up here in Scotland. So here's my pipes, my wee pipes. I'll play you a little bit of something, I think. small, obviously the online community helps. And there's a guy in Germany called Ingo Schutzinger who got to know I was doing this talk. He said, I must send you my machine. You must play my machine. I said, okay, I'll play your machine. And so this is another bit of kit that he sent over for me to demonstrate. I thought for a bit of fun it might be quite nice to show you this. So he makes a sampling machine which plays various sounds, and various keys to make polyphonic chords, and this is a bit cheesy, but I thought it was quite fun. All of my stuff is cheesy. So they do with trumpet. A bit of Haydn. Work out which button to press. talk about in a moment as definitely being the top of my list. But the people who you may not have heard their names, but certainly you will have heard some of their music. Just let me set this up. So, besides Niall Steiner, there's Bob Minster. Everyone's heard of Bob Minster. He's a great EWI player. I'm never sure what you call an EWI player. Could we call it an EWIst? I think that might work. Joel Peskin, who got together with Niall Steiner early on, of course, he would be a big name. Judd Miller is a massive name in the EWI world. Actually, EV, which we should say, he plays a Valve version as well. Jeff Cashua, you might have come across. There's a brilliant guy called Steve Tavalloni. You'll find him on YouTube as well. He does a lot of film work. He's the guy actually that did Finding Nemo and stuff like that. In Asia, there's Masato Honda. Masato Honda is massive over there. There's a big group called T-Square, and they're absolutely huge over there. But for me, and really probably the reason I got into the EWI was Michael Brecker. And you know, not only was he possibly the best tenor sax player in the world, he was a fantastic EWI player, and there are some brilliant videos of him playing stuff from way back when he was just playing like a prototype. It looked like he was held together with bits of tape, you know. And in fact, the first piece I played was a bit of a homage to him as well, because some of you might know that was a thing called Song for Barry. He does a big demo of Song for Barry on YouTube if you want to go see that, with all sorts of samples being triggered. But for me, it was a recording that he made of In a Sentimental Mood, which just absolutely blew me away. He kind of was the first time I'd heard a synthetic sound played really musically, and he uses the whole range absolutely brilliantly. So this is a transcription that I've done myself of the Michael Brecker's In a Sentimental Mood. concerto. There's a concerto for EWI by Michael Brecker. He wrote a lot of film music, of course, as well, which Steiner wrote. Time's moving on, so what I'm going to do is go straight on to the next piece. This is a piece that is actually originally for alto saxophone, and by a friend of mine, Tony Davis, and it's what he likes to call chamber dance music. And there's a sort of backing track that goes along with this. It's kind of quite funky, and I think it works very well for EWI because the EWI kind of blends with the track really nicely. It's quite a busy thing, and again, I think it's quite a nice example of the sort of thing you can do on the EWI. So this is Rhapsody by Tony Davis. to do before we do that. Has anybody got anything they'd like to just ask now that might be interesting for everybody?
What is the software that you use to
Okay. So what I'm doing is using Ableton Live as a front end, just because it's really easy to set up with the pedal. So Ableton Live allows me to play some sampled sounds through that. I can do looping because since we got Live 8, we had kind of loop facility in that as well. It's always had looping, but it does it differently now. And it means I can just swap pretty quickly and easily through the front end. You can do some tempo syncing and all sorts, you know, with Live. So basically, it's just Live.
You know, I got
Sorry?
You're
You're absolutely right. I don't get to look like this by going to bed at 11 o'clock. Yeah, and it's kind of an advantage and a disadvantage, but yes, you can put your headphones on and you can play all night without disturbing anybody. I mean, it's great if you're away. I've had pupils actually that play saxophone, and so they want to play something, they'll go away, you know, in a hotel room, they'll stick the headphones on and they'll play away for a few hours. And yeah.
Question about fingering. There's plenty of alternative fingerings available on this. Do you find the learning curve to adjust to the choices difficult?
Well, like I say, I've kind of always just looked for the saxophone fingering because what I just couldn't get is the fact that the articulated G sharp wouldn't work on the EWI fingering. So basically, as you know, on the saxophone, when you're holding G sharp down, anything below in your right hand cancels out G sharp for you, basically. But on EWI fingering, it doesn't. On EWI fingering, any side key that's pressed moves you a semitone off any note, which could be very useful, but it's pretty confusing when you're just used to saxophone fingering. So I tend to just stick with the saxophone. Yeah.
So did you play? There was an example that you sustained note and kept playing.
Yeah.
So how was that done?
Oh, this is just there's a kind of dual oscillator inside, and what I've got is that there's two keys on the side here. One sets to play an octave apart, and the other one sets to play one note, which then, whichever last note you played, that sustains. So when I do my duet, I have to trigger the first note, that's the one that's going to get sustained. You can set it as well, quite interesting for some of the composers, is you can set that to play continuous intervals from whatever interval you first play. So if you set a fifth or something, you can play everything from a fifth. I have to change some stuff in the back to demonstrate that. It's a bit of a job, but you can set it to be. Yeah. Hello? Yeah, but you'd be better through the software to do that. There isn't anything in here, in the instrument itself. There's only transposition. You can retune the whole thing, but no, there aren't any specific scales. But obviously, world's your oyster on the software side to set up any of those. And I think Ableton Live allows you to do that as well. Actually, you can do that probably live. Was there going to be something else? Oh, yes.
Presumably you can set it up if you were composing instead of a MIDI keyboard to feed in to software, could you?
Yeah, you can, but I don't know if you've had much experience of inputting stuff into Sibelius or something like that. Sorry? Yeah. Because of that nature of the triggering is really easy to misfire.
Right.
And you know, I've had some today, there's been some glitches there. It's very difficult to get that octave mechanism to be absolutely tight. But unless so you've got to set up your finale or your Sibelius so that it's not going to recognise those very short notes, because you'll end up with a load of barmy stuff on the occasionally. So yes, you can. The other thing to just remember, if you're looking at it music-wise, the amount of information that this thing sends out into a MIDI interface is massive, because it's continuous controller information, which is, you know, millions of bits of data every second or something stupid. You've got to watch out that you've got a pretty good interface as well, because a lot of them fall over with EWI. Yeah?
That's some original pieces written?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You know, in fact, there's something being performed on Saturday morning here at 9 o'clock, I think. Forgive me, I don't know the performer's name, but yeah. So there are some stuff. It's not, I mean, obviously a lot of it is very contemporary music, and, you know, Richard Ingham did some stuff years ago when he played some compositions, and his was on WX, the Yamaha range. I should have said actually, Akai is not the only one you can get. You can get a Yamaha WX5. There's the old Lyricon still knocking around. So there's a few different things still around. Yeah.
Sorry, where do we find these pieces?
The pieces.
Yes.
Okay.
Words.
Where? Yeah, one of the best websites you can go to is Patchman Music. Patchman Music. They are absolutely fantastic. There's a big kind of online community there. In fact, you've been listening to Patchman sounds for the old session here because they're the sounds that I play. He's programmed a load of new sounds into the EWI, and he's kind of central to the land of electronic wind industry. Yeah, one more.
Are you using the Yamaha visual modeling tone generator?
No, I have done. Unfortunately, I made a big mistake when I used to play WX5. When this thing came out, I thought, ooh, I like this, I'm going to change it. So I sold my WX5 and the tone generator. And after 3 days with this, I wanted to give it back because I hated it. It was just, I couldn't get used to it. But then it started to click. You've got to practice quite a lot. You can't just kind of pick it up like a piano player would play a synthesizer. It's a bit more involved than that, I think, really. But yeah, I wish I still had the tone generator because, again, Patchman Music does some brilliant sounds for that. But yeah, there's a VL70M, which is an amazing little tone generator, great for composing as well. Yeah.
I have a WX7 to sell.
Sorry?
I have a WX7 to sell if you want.
Do you? Yeah. Well, of course, they've been superseded now, but I mean, still a lot of people think the WX7 is the Yamaha with controller still to have with it. So, yeah. Let me just say thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I'm just going to play you a little loop to finish off with. This is something that Jeff Cashewer did a while ago online. So, again, this is just a little kind of poppy loop thing. For those of you that don't understand what's going on here then, so I have a drum track that's already preset, but that's the only thing that's pre-recorded in this short little demo. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing a button which says, right, whatever I play now, record. So I start to record a line, and then it immediately jumps into playing that back to me, and I record the next line over it. So I've got 2, then a 3rd and a 4th if I want to. Then I can say, right, stop recording me, now I want a solo over the top. Okay? So that's simple. The beauty of this is, then I can start a whole new loop off. So again, I can start here, start recording me now, I'm going to play something different, and here's a section, and build it up. And then if I want to, I've still got memorized my first loop, so I can go back to that. And this happens 3 times in this piece. So once again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you've kind of picked up a few little things on the EWI. I think they've got one over there in the town hall, if you want to go and have a look. Plenty of stuff online. There's some really good online EWI lessons by yours truly that have now had nearly 100,000 hits. I was quite impressed. So this is just a little